Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us here on the AJ's Fight page for the first of our Eosinophil Awareness Week and Allergy Awareness Month live conversations. I am ecstatic to have the Mitchells with us and thank them for being open to sharing their story, their E.O.E journey with their daughter, Irene. And just want to tell you a little bit about AJ's Fight. AJ's Fight has been in existence now for close to 6 years. We are a nonprofit organization that is based in Houston, Texas. We support and fund research in the eosinophil diseases, mainly eosinophilic esophagitis. We promote community and we spread awareness. So thank you, Mitchells, for being with me. How you guys doing?
Great.
Doing well.
Good.
So just want to start out by introducing Dave, Irene, and Kristyn and give them a moment to tell us a little bit about themselves.
You want to start, Irene?
All right, I'm Kristyn. I get to be mom. I have been a part of Irene's life since birth, and it is a joy to be her mom and to watch her grow into a young lady and an advocate for the E.O.E community. We have quite the experiences with E.O.E, which is eosinophilic esophagitis. And we actually met Kimberly and AJ at one of the local conferences where we were able to form an E.O.E family group that is supportive and wonderful.
Yes. Dave?
Yeah, hi, I'm Dave. I'm a professor here at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. And yeah, this is my family. That's the most important thing.
Irene, are you going to introduce yourself? Can you tell us how old you are?
My name is Irene and I'm 12.
Irene is a sixth grader at our local middle school this year. We are virtual due to COVID and will remain virtual for a while until Irene is able to have the vaccine and we know we can return safely.
Sounds good to me. So tell me about the early times. You know, you got Irene, and how long was it after she came home that you realized that there was something different going on?
So Irene's first meal was Infamil, and due to our adoption, and she was fed that for her entire life. At about 26 months, we were finally able to get a diagnosis. And at that point, we were able to change things. But in the meantime, Irene was a happy, typical baby from everything we could see. She was not fussy. And there came the time when we started introducing the rice cereals, and she was very happy to eat. And then we started a little bit more chunky foods, like peaches and anything that just had a little bit of a texture. And as soon as we introduced that first bite, it started a cough, which started a projectile vomit, and everything in her system that she had eaten in the last 6 hours came projectiling up at us, and a big smile went across her face, and she signed more. More. So we feed her more, and the same thing would happen. And we knew this wasn't normal, but we kept being told by the medical community that she will outgrow this. It could be a texture aversion. It could be that she's constipated. And we just kept having that intuition that something wasn't right.
Yeah, I'll just add that, so that maybe is about a year old or so when that really started to kick in. And
9 months was our peak.
Yeah, and you know, like you saying, it took a while to figure out what was going on, but in the meantime, we were living our life, and Irene was, other than this thing we couldn't explain, was still happy and smart and a normal kid. But it was, I mean, we're just parents. We don't know what we're doing, and so not being able to
know what you were doing.
No.
So trying to,
but we did our best.
but it's stressful not knowing what's going on and not knowing if you're the problem or what.
Right.
And also just
if it's a food intolerance or
and also knowing that every time you leave the house, you have to bring a change of clothes for everybody, because it's pretty likely she was going to throw up and just I don't know. It's just like that constant stress of not knowing what's going to happen, or maybe we did know what was going to happen when we would go out, and having to limit what we could do.
And babysitters would bring multiple outfits to our house when they would take care of her, knowing that this was hazard pay. But that Irene was happy going to the playground when she'd projectile vomit, because the cough would happen. We could clear out the playground in a matter of seconds. And our friends that knew us were our supports. They understood what was going on, even though we didn't have any answers, and they'd assure everybody this is just who our child is, that it's okay, she's not sick.
And, you know, so just to put a little bit of context behind this, we found over the years that with eosinophilic esophagitis in particular, first of all, it is an allergy-mediated disease. So there is an internal reaction in the esophagus, and for many children in the stomach and intestinal tract, where there's inflammation and there is irritation that causes these types of things. We also know that depending on the age of the child, the symptoms kind of look different. Mm-hmm. And for many kids, the first symptom is that projectile vomiting, right?
And a lot of times paired with the barky cough and a sneeze that follows the vomit.
Yeah, so for us, it started with breast milk for AJ.
Okay.
You know, when he was born, he loved to latch on and to drink, and then he would give it right back to me. And our story kind of mirrors exactly yours, where we were just told, and the difference between us is Irene was your first baby, AJ was my fourth. And so the doctors are saying, well, you're not doing it right. And I'm like, I did it right 3 times before.
And we were told it was the bottles we were using. We were using a type of bottle, and we were told that we were inducing this by continuing to bottle feed her. We also invested in a magic bullet and pureed all the food that she was eating. It would go down and it would not come back up. So we knew at the time that we were giving her proper nutrition. It just, we had to think creatively. If it could go down a straw, it would stay down. If it did not go down a straw, it would come up. And that was just over a matter of time. So the 9 months to 26 months, we saw our local pediatrician who held our hand. They'd never seen this. And so they just kept saying, okay, we're gonna figure this out. We're gonna figure this out. So we went to a local children's hospital, and the children's hospital treated us for 6 months with severe constipation and started us on Prevacid, which is a H1 blocker, and thinking that that would cause her symptoms to go away. And they didn't. And after 6 months, we went to a larger city children's hospital, and they actually didn't even listen to us. They turned and looked at us as parents as what were we doing wrong to feed her?
Right.
And so they accused us, and it was very hurtful and painful. And at that point, we could either give up, but we had pediatricians that were holding our hands locally and said, we got to take this bigger. So we went to a research institution, and my mother-in-law's friend had just read an article in the fitness magazine that eosinophilic esophagitis existed, and said, wouldn't it be lucky if that's what she had? And of course, she didn't present the way they had seen it. So I took a video and recorded the action of her eating. And our doctor looked at it and said, we're scoping her.
Wow.
In that process, they found it. And in fact, her esophagus was about the size of a drinking straw. Wow. At the time, it was so inflamed, and it was not stretchy. And there was a reason. So at 26 months, we were told our daughter is allergic to food, and we didn't know what the disease was. And it brought tears to our eyes because we had no idea what to do. So they eliminated all food from Irene and put her on a hypoallergenic medical liquid called Neocate. In fact, we were sent home with Elecare and Neocate, which are 2 brands of formula. The Elecare caused her to be violently ill, but the Neocate she seemed to tolerate. And they put her on this liquid, which had a very—
medical food, that's what they call it, medical food.
Medical food, which has a very strong smell and odor. And while I was driving home with my mom and Irene from the hospital, a college student who was living with us, as well as Dave, cleared out all the food from our kitchen, put anything that a 2.5-year-old would get into away so she wouldn't have access to it. And we decided we're going to do this. And so for
Let's
us,
go back for a minute,
yeah.
Kristyn. Dave, so in this time, you are kind of like on the sidelines. Clearly, Kristyn is the talker, right? So she's in front of the doctors, she's in front of everybody around, and I'm 1,001 questions. I can only imagine it. What are you thinking during this time?
You know, so I didn't get to go to all the doctor's appointments, right? I went to some. I was there when the doctors from that hospital, I guess we're not naming, told us it was our fault. And I was there for the talking to the doctor that said it's constipation and such. But I wasn't up at Stanford. And I got to tell you, I didn't even, well, I didn't buy it was E.E., to be honest, when they first said it, like before they scoped her, because it didn't it didn't make much sense to me that it was allergies, because any solid food would come up, right? It didn't occur to me that all that food was causing the problem in the first place.
Right.
So what was it like for me? I didn't like not being able to go to the doctor's appointments, to all of them, just because it's scary, right? And while obviously I trust Kristyn, I want to be there when my daughter is getting poked and trying to figure out what's going on with her.
Right.
So it was a little frustrating, but I had to work. And I mean, other than that, I think it really was kind of the same experience of having a daughter who we don't know what's going on. And so we only kind of have ourselves to lean on, because while friends were supportive, they didn't know what was going on either. And so it was kind of, I don't know, to my view of it was just kind of us supporting each other, trying to get through this and figure out what's going on.
And for our marriage, it was probably one of the strongest points, because we had to talk, we had to communicate, we had to have a plan in place, because it mattered about our child.
To give up?
No,
we had to
that
be
was just the opposite.
We had to be
weren't gonna give up.
a well-oiled machine, right? To just sort of like cope with what was going on while we were trying to figure it out.
Right. So we've used a little bit of lingo here. So I want to go back a little bit, because those who are not a part of our community, I would like them to be able to follow the conversation. So what happens with eosinophilic esophagitis is it's the actual proteins in food that cause the harm. And so it's a lot of different foods. It's not having an anaphylactic reaction to something like peanuts or eggs. It's having this very aggressive internal reaction to proteins in a lot of different things. And Kristyn mentioned scoping. So Dave, can you tell us a little bit about what scoping is and what that process is and what they're looking for?
Irene may also want to talk about that.
Do you want to talk about what your endoscopy is like? What?
Scary.
Scary. You can add in as I talk about it. So the endoscopy they do for Irene, they go into her esophagus and take pictures first of all, to see what it looks like, because when you have E.E., not only can your esophagus be constricted, but it can also have certain like strictures and shapes that indicate that there are problems, right? It's not as flexible as it should be, things like that. And they're also going in there to take samples, biopsies of the tissue, to see if there are eosinophils, these I guess they're white blood cells, is that right? That are, we don't want them, right? They're there to fight disease, but they shouldn't be there to fight food. And so the proteins are causing them to be in your esophagus when you should have none.
Right.
And so by taking biopsies, they can count and see if there are eosinophils where there shouldn't be, as a way of basically probing for the disease. And so this is the standard thing that somebody with E.E. would get done regularly, once to be able to see how healthy your esophagus is. And for Irene, of course, never having had it done, it was how the diagnosis was able to be made.
Right. And it is a standard for diagnosis still. We have not, though there are many things in clinical trial, we haven't found another way to determine whether or not someone has E.O.E. or any of the other EGID diseases. Now, we talked about the eosinophil. Eosinophils are white blood cells in our bodies that belong there. They're at home in our bodies, but they kind of respond to the wrong thing in children and adults who have E.O.E. Their job is to respond to allergies and infection. And when you have E.O.E., they kind of respond to all of the wrong places. And what they do to the inside of the esophagus is they cause things to get into the layer of your esophagus and cause damage. And so one of the things that we have to do is kind of work on our children not eating specific foods so that that doesn't happen, because it does cause permanent damage as time goes on. So you said that they took all food away from Irene. How did you guys start reintroducing foods, and what was that process like for you?
I just want to add really quick one thing. Irene has her first endoscopy mask.
Look at how small it is.
It is so small. And one of the reasons we don't want to do the endoscopies often is that it is anesthesia. So Irene has now had 14 endoscopies. So she's gone under with anesthesia 14 times. And there's just not a lot known about anesthesia in young kids. So that's why we chose the option of going entirely elemental and adding foods back in. We thought she's already been on formula her whole life. Why not do the formula route? And our doctor didn't know a lot about this process. So we were told we could either take one food away and then scope every few weeks, or that we could take all foods away and slowly scope as we added foods back in. So that sounded the safest to us as parents.
So how often were you scoping at that point?
What, every 6 months to a year or something
I
like
think
that?
the first one, they had us sit out 8 weeks, 2 months, to see if there was healing, and then she was actually able to respond to the formula, which she was. It went from over 500 eosinophils in the different biopsies to under 50. So we knew she was responding and her esophagus was healing with just the elemental formulas itself. And the doctor said we could cook any food we wanted to add back in to
So what
Irene's
did you
diet.
go with?
So what did you pick? Do you remember?
Watermelon.
Watermelon. And we
Okay.
thought, it's watermelon. What could possibly be in watermelon other than water?
No protein in that, right?
No protein in that. And Irene was very reactive to that. So we stopped watermelon and tried rice, because people all over the world eat rice. And at that point, they did a scope, and it was as bad as the first scope. So they sent us to Colorado, which is one of the Seeger sites,
Right.
to gain some further information and come up with a plan. And at that time, we were given a choice whether to continue along the elemental diet, adding one food at a time or clusters of food at a time, or to add steroids. And we chose to continue trialing new foods.
Okay.
And we did
And
that.
so just so that the community knows, diagnostic criteria is 15 eosinophils per high-powered field. So what that means is the doctors go in and they take these little biopsies of flesh from inside of the esophagus, and they actually count how many eosinophils they find in that area. And if you have 15 or more, then you are in active disease. You have eosinophilic esophagitis and your disease is active. So I hear you guys saying numbers like 500.
And we got down to 50.
Okay.
Which was still pretty high.
Right. So what are you feeling like at this point, Irene? So your eosinophils are high, and I'm sure you don't really know what that means, but what does your body feel like?
Do you remember?
Bad.
It felt bad. Was it hard to eat?
Yeah.
Lots of tummy aches?
So Irene was about 3.5 at that time. And let's just say food that entered her mouth had a really tough time coming out.
Yeah.
And so that caused a lot of GI tract inflammation as well as pain. It changed the time of day we would leave the house. It changed the activities that we would do during the day. A lot of tears when it came to toilet time, and a lot of behaviors that were not age appropriate. We digressed quite a bit during that period of time.
So
as well as occasionally we'd have the barking cough and the vomits. They had not gone away yet. They'd gotten better, but they still hadn't gone away.
So you said she's 3 years old. You said she's 3 years old at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So that means we've had 3 milestones, right? We've had 3 birthdays, and she's elemental for all of them. She's on formula, and that's
No
what she
reason to
had.
have a fork.
So what did birthdays look like? What did Christmas, Thanksgiving, what did holidays and food gatherings? Because, you know, food is the epicenter of American life, right? We live to eat. What did those look like for you?
So, I mean, taking it back just a quick step, when we first got diagnosed and immediately went elemental and took away all food, right? And she was just drinking formula, we actually stopped eating as a family. So we would, you know, she would have her formula at appropriate times. And when Kristyn and I needed to eat, we would, like, one of us would go hide in another room and eat while one of us, or maybe one of us would take Irene for a walk while the other one had a meal, so that we didn't have food around her.
Or a babysitter.
Yeah, well, we had a college student living with us at the time, actually. So there's 3 of us that were able to juggle that. But then, yeah, once we started, you know, trialing foods, it was difficult, but Irene really did okay. She really likes the smells of food, and so that would be sort of her way of joining in the meal is she would smell our food, and we really didn't. We tried our best after she started trialing food. We tried our best not to shield her from meals. Like, we would have food around her. We would take her to restaurants sometimes. We'd have her at family gatherings just to make it a normal thing.
And we brought all of those. We brought any food that she was trialing to all of these events.
Right. She would have her food that we bring, but she was around it and she would smell it, and she was really okay with it. Like, it was, I don't feel like it was stressful for her for the most part.
One of her first Christmases, I'll never forget, we made a Christmas tree centerpiece out of green beans, grapes, and peppers, because those were the foods that she could have. And we sauteed carrots in every shape and size. And so that was dinner. And it was great. And so having to have our families adjust, we are very blessed that they have been very supportive on that.
How did that change the picture you guys had in your head? You know, Irene was adopted, you guys freely shared that, and she was your choice, and you made your family, and you guys came together. And I know even as a parent, you have this image of what that's going to look like, right? You're a new parent, and you know what you envision for your family. How did you have to reinvent that and evolve from what you had already pictured in your mind?
Honestly, we committed to being parents. We didn't have any strings attached to being parents. So that has never crossed our mind as this was a choice. This is our daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And just as any child is born to any of us, we never know the personality that's going to come out. And we got blessed big time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think that's ever, I'm just very, very thankful that Dave has a job that has medical insurance, that I'm a teacher, I have my master's in teaching, and that I was able to step out of the classroom and be a medical mom, because dealing with insurance and dealing with stomach aches and trips to the doctor and all of that takes time. There's no way I could hold a full-time job. So again, that was part of our plan in the future, but it just meant it fast forwarded a little bit. And then as Irene's gotten older and taken more leadership in her medical, I've been able to step back a little bit more. And that's been really helpful for all of us as well.
So it sounds like you guys spent, 3 years old, she started trialing food. She's 12 now. So you've gone up and down, and you've had the roller coaster ride of what it's like to trial foods and not be successful, try something else. Tell me about Irene's mental health. How have you managed to keep that balance and keep that girl smiling? Because I see her smiling all the time.
Are you a happy girl? Yeah. I think we don't let the disease completely define our family. It does consume us. It does. We have it thinking about it all the time. Every product, every food, every environment we go to, we have to preemptively talk about it with the families that Irene's going to go to their house. But we are in a small town, and we have friends and family that have supported us and make sure they have Irene friendly food on the table. We have teachers and classrooms that make sure the class party is entirely Irene friendly, and that she goes through the line first to get those foods so that there's no chance of cross contamination. And every step is thought out, but Irene doesn't like to talk about E.O.E all the time because she's 12.
Mhm,
But
absolutely.
we started a steroid when she was 3.5. It did get her down to 0 eosinophils. We were able to scope what we say is clean. And Dave was given a job opportunity to live in Germany for 6 months. And we packed up, and as a family, we went. And it felt like a medical vacation because no one there knew we had E.O.E. And so it was not a hat we had to wear outside. It was just a hat we had to wear within our family. So
how did you manage her medical needs in Germany? What was the difference?
Well, they have a first world healthcare system there, so that certainly helped. Insurance companies cover medical care and things, so it was quite frankly, it saved us money moving to Germany.
A piece of her medical formulas, insurance did not cover it for us. We tried it many ways, and we were paying $80 to $100 a day for enough medical food to keep Irene alive.
Mhm.
In Germany, it was entirely, Dave was part of their work system for the period of time. It was entirely covered, including our medical insurance, as we considered it as a gift. That was a real blessing for our family.
Okay. And what formula is she on? Is she still on formula now?
So are you on formula anymore?
No.
When Irene was in 3rd grade, we were starting to notice a few symptoms, but weren't concerned about it. The formula had changed, and Irene became allergic to the hypoallergenic medical liquid, which you're not supposed to become allergic to. Her body had changed as well as the product had changed. So we had to take formula out. Irene spent the whole summer very, very sick and lethargic, and hardly had enough energy to get hardly had energy to get out of bed. It was rough.
I think it sounded to me from what she was telling us like it felt like she had the flu all summer.
Wow.
Wow. Sore throat, sore tummy, just no
Didn't
energy.
want to play, didn't want to talk on the phone, just wasn't a kid that summer. And so what did we put in?
When we started 4th grade, what would we have to start eating?
Chicken. And
That's
for the
big. A lot of
chicken,
kiddos,
that was big.
yeah.
Here it is,
That's
a
big.
protein allergy. But Irene overcame a lot of obstacles that year because for the first time she was experiencing what it felt like to be hungry, which quickly became hangry because she wasn't aware that's what her body was telling her. And she didn't like the texture and she didn't like the taste, but her body needed it. So she had to teach her body to eat it anyway.
Right.
And now not only do we have chicken, but we have bacon, turkey bacon, turkey hamburgers, and turkey. And so turkey's been a game changer for us because now it's starting to feel like our dinners that we have the same dinner.
Yeah.
And
so what else do you have besides chicken and turkey, Irene?
What other foods? And no, cotton candy is not a full food.
But they do love cotton candy.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite foods?
French fries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, potatoes.
Yeah, we got potatoes.
Potato, popcorn,
Mm-hmm.
and corn. I can have ice cream.
Sorbet.
Mm-hmm.
Sorbet.
Made out of fruits.
Cotton candy.
Mm-hmm.
It counts as a food.
We have most fruits, most vegetables, chicken, and turkey.
Great. I'm so glad that she's graduated to being able to tolerate so much. So I do want to add, we keep saying cotton candy. So one of the other things about our kiddos with E.O.E is if the food doesn't have any protein in it, it's kind of like you can have it. So sugar. I know my kid eats all the sugar he wants, like a parent's dream. So we get away with cotton candy. I think he's on Airheads and I think that might be it. Cotton candy and Dum Dum lollipops. Like those are his 3 go-tos. The Airheads, Dum Dum lollipops, and cotton candy. as long as
You asked earlier what changed as far as our vision of what families were due to this disease. I think that was something we talked about, is always going organic, always having fruits and vegetables on the table, eating healthy. And the foods that she was not reacting to were salt and sugar. And so if we went to a restaurant, we'd order a plate of sugar or a plate of salt for our daughter, or a Sprite, because that was one of the first foods we trialed, was Sprite, so that she could have something when we go out to order. And so always the look of the waiters or the waitresses as they bring out a plate of sugar to us was hard to swallow for us, but not for her.
Yeah, I remember when we were trialing peaches for AJ and going to the supermarket and literally having a shopping cart just full of peaches, and someone actually asking me, like, why are you buying all of those peaches? And me explaining it. And then I remember when peach season ended, and I literally stood in the supermarket the day that I couldn't get any more peaches, and I was bawling because it was the only food he could have. And like, no rhyme or reason, I'm standing there, and I asked the produce person if they had any peaches in the back, and he said, no, they're out of season. And I was thoroughly and completely unprepared to hear it. And I stood in the middle of the supermarket and cried. And people don't realize that when you have a child and all they can have is a single food, what it feels
and during
like.
the pandemic, how hard it has been for a lot of our families that have not been able to get that one product that a grocery store carries.
Not only the one product, but just the Food and Drug Administration saying that they can now have some liberties in labeling. You know, we really haven't even gone into detail about how we have to read the labels on everything every single time because they change. You know, natural flavors is the devil, right? Who knows what a natural flavor is?
Irene reacted to one last week. We do. That is a true statement.
You know, we put it down and we stop buying so many different things. And, you know, I never thought I would live in a house where a cabinet was locked or where I had to hide food because I was afraid that my son would react to it. It really does change the DNA of how you navigate your household. So give us some good news. Tell us where we are, what we're doing, and
Did you want
what
to show
the future holds.
Use your big voice and talk about it.
We have some pictures, don't we?
What is that?
Can you tell us what it is?
It's my book that has the history of life.
So Irene, a couple of years ago, was asked to talk in front of her class during National Eosinophil Awareness Week, which is coming up. And to prepare for it, her teacher had Irene write a book so she could look at her E.O.E journey as a story, and a story that doesn't have an ending because it's constantly changing. So Irene wrote a book, and there's a couple pages I think Irene would like to share, if okay.
Sure, absolutely.
A book.
You did. Is there something you want to show? There's you on, what is that?
So let's go to let's go to one of these first pages. So here is Irene, her first food, both the liquid form. I have a bottle in her hand, and look at those sleep deprived parents there, and her first tasting of cereals. And at that time, everything was still going down easily. And Irene tells that she was a happy kid and continued to eat. The only thing difference is that she would sign, what would you sign? More after she vomited. And then she goes on to say she and her family had to go through a lot of medical procedures at a young age, and she continues to go through those even now. And so you see some of the different feeding devices as well as preparing for an endoscopy.
So you've had a tube in your nose to eat, Irene. Have you ever had a tube in your stomach to eat? No, so just in your nose? And it would go down your nose and into your stomach and formula would go down there?
And they just tried it. It was the then they did a test to see if she was having the spasms.
Mhm.
And then Irene wanted to share, how do you feel after you have your endoscopies?
Sore, my throat sort of hurts.
Yeah.
And do you want to eat right away after that?
Mm-mm.
And do you feel groggy and sleepy still? Like your head is in a fog?
And at the time Irene did this presentation, she was in 3rd grade, and she was the only 3rd grader she knew that would drink formula from a bottle. But you like drinking the formula from a bottle because it tasted good. She actually really liked her formula. So here's a picture of Irene eating 3 different ways. And that is her as a 3rd grader eating a bottle. And that is something we learned as well, is that it doesn't matter how you are able to take in your nutrition, as long as you can take in your nutrition.
That's right.
And the things you would think a 3rd grader would have to go through didn't happen, because her friends were the friends that she'd had her whole life. And that's how they knew Irene. They knew she had to stop in the middle of the day and have her bottle. The bottle may have changed and looked differently as she got older, but it was not a big deal. And we really feel blessed by that. And then Irene's birthday cakes might look a little different. That one there in the bottom corner is made out of, what is this one made out of?
Lollipop.
Lollipops, cotton candy, and Fun Dip.
Okay.
And so her friends don't have any problem having cake at our house, because it is sugar, sugar, and more sugar. And their families let them have as many dum-dums as they want during the birthday party, because that's the food we serve. And again, we're really thankful that we have friends. And then Irene finds support not only at school. That sign was in front of her school during National Eosinophil Awareness Week. The staff at the school and her friends and my friends and Dave's friends all wear purple on Friday to support the disease, as well as when we go to AppFed E.O.E camp. Irene finds that network and community where she can talk about it, and she's just like everybody else.
Oh, that is so amazing, Irene. And you are so brave to have to continue to endure all of these things over and over and over again, and you continue to show up. And I know every time I see you or see a picture of you, you're smiling.
So,
So,
do you want to share what your wish is for E.O.E? If you had a wish, what would you be?
That I could. I don't know, that it would be over.
that it would
That
be
E.O.E would be over.
I think that is all of our wish. And that's why we're having these talks, Irene, because we want people to know what it is to have E.O.E and to try to have some understanding, because I think, I don't know, it's 25 plus years now that people have started diagnosing E.O.E, and we learn a little bit more every year. And as we continue to have clinical trials, but the reality is that we don't have an FDA approved drug to treat E.O.E. You know, there is no standard of treatment. And the standard of testing is very, very new and very recent. And so we have these consortiums, and we have Seeger, and we have these medical hubs who are now talking to each other in hopes that we can find some uniformity, but also so that we can find better treatment, so that we don't have to keep doing the anesthesia and intubations and having sore throats. And so that we can really find a cure that will take E.O.E away, right, Irene? That's the goal. Yeah. Any last thoughts for us?
I think if we were to give advice to families that are just finding out about this disease in their own families, it's to reach out and form a network, because each of us has a complex story. They're complicated. They're not the same. What's safe for our child may not be safe for your child.
Right.
But there's an understanding of what the process is like behind the scenes, of what the daily life looks like.
Right.
And that really is our saving grace and what keeps us going forward. Irene has a peer group. We have adults that we're able to talk to. and we learn from each other.
That's right. That's right. Dave, any last thoughts from you?
It kind of goes along with what Kristyn said before, but one of the best things I think for our family has been how other families that we are with in our area are just include Irene in all that we do, right? They make sure that she's as much a part of the birthday party or whatever it is as anybody else. And that means a lot.
And Irene, do you have anything else you wanted to share?
The anesthesia made me hallucinate.
That might be fun. We'll have to get mom to record that the next
No,
time.
it was not fun.
Not fun. They were not good hallucinations.
Well, I like to
But it is scary and it is a process. And because of that, every time we go to a medical clinic or an area with bright lights, or someone needs to look in Irene's mouth, like the dentist or the doctor, we deal with a lot of anxiety because it is
Right.
traumatic.
Right.
Even if it's just to have a talking doctor's appointment, it's traumatic because of what she's gone through.
That's right. Absolutely. And we want to work on limiting the amount of appointments and the amount of talking to doctors that we have to do.
In fact,
so-
telehealth has its benefits.
Absolutely. It does on both sides of the coin.
Uh-huh.
So thank you. Thank you to the Mitchell family for joining us. Thank you, Irene, for being so transparent and sharing your story and answering our questions. I really appreciate you. I appreciate your parents too, but I know this was super scary for you. So thank you so much for being here and letting us know all about you. Join us for our next talk, which will be on the 16th, where we will speak to another family who is affected by eosinophilic esophagitis as we continue to shed light on a disease. Visit www.ajsfight.org for more information about eosinophilic esophagitis, how you can help, and how you can get involved. Thank you so much for joining us.